One thing that you find in a romance of Shakespeare's time is a very exotic setting. Now, in our romances of the 21st century, we often have them taking place in very pedestrian settings where people might meet cute at school or at the bus stop or at a party, or it doesn't require an exotic locale. But in Shakespeare's day, a romance took place in Italy, or took place in an enchanted island, or took place in the ancient world somewhere. It had to be distanced from the everyday. And for Shakespeare's time, a perfect choice for his play, The Tempest, is to set his magic island, his enchanted, deserted island, in the New World. Shakespeare's a bit confusing because, of course, the king is going to sail back home from his daughter's new country, Tunis, to Naples, which of course is in southern Italy, and that would mean that he has to be shipwrecked in the Mediterranean. But as Shakespeare describes his island, we can tell that he's been reading all sorts of up-to-date material about the New World. And the New World is actually being settled by English at this time. So the first colony that the English tried to establish did not pan out. It was in Roanoke, Virginia, Virginia being named for Queen Elizabeth, the Virgin Queen. And then during Shakespeare's time, there's the colony at Jamestown. And just a few years after Shakespeare's death, the Mayflower would sail to what they named Plymouth Bay in Massachusetts. So Shakespeare is writing during a time of intense excitement and interest about the New World. And just as for us, or for the generations previous to us, science fiction was a wonderful tool to explore human nature. Would robots have human feelings? What about Hal in 2001? Is he capable of treachery, or is he just programmed by humans to do their bidding? People of Shakespeare's time were exploring these questions about human nature with relation to the natives that they were discovering in the New World. So one of Shakespeare's contemporaries, a Frenchman named Michel de Montaigne, wrote a series of essays, and one of his essays was of cannibals. And in his essay, he reports the information that he received from someone who went on a trip to explore the New World. And this person is reporting on the people that live there, the cannibals. One of the things he reports is that they only eat people that they take in war, and they just fight wars for the glory of it. Everyone has everything they need, so nobody ever fights wars out of mean intentions, just for the sake of competitiveness and winning. So if they take a prisoner in their war, which is very unusual because most of them are so noble and valiant they would rather fight to the death, all that prisoner needs to say is, "You beat me," and they'll let him go. But if he doesn't say, "I admit you beat me," then they're going to eat him. So they're cannibals, but they're very noble-hearted cannibals. And I want to read you a little snippet where he describes what his acquaintance told him. "It is a nation where there is no manner of traffic, no knowledge of letters, no science of numbers, no name of magistrate or political superiority, no use of service, riches, or poverty, no contracts, no successions, no dividends, no properties, no employments but those of leisure, no respect of kindred, but common, no clothing, no agriculture, no metal, no use of corn or wine, The very words that signify lying, treachery, dissimulation, avarice, envy, detraction, pardon, never heard of. And I want you to look with me at Act 2, Scene 1, where the king of Naples and his entourage are wandering around the island, and Gonzalo, to take King Alonso's mind off the fact that they're stranded, they're shipwrecked, his son is drowned, they're all going to die, he starts fantasizing. He says, "Had I plantation of this isle, and were the king on't, what would I do?" And then he answers his own questions. "In the Commonwealth, I would by contraries execute all things. For no kind of traffic would I admit, no name of magistrate. Letters should not be known, riches, poverties, and use of service, none." And you can read the rest of the speech, but you can tell that it's very obvious that Shakespeare has been grabbing up and devouring all of the translations and all of the first-hand English accounts that come off the press. The particular translation that Shakespeare was using was published in 1603, so you can tell that he was up to date. Of course, not all observers of the New World felt these inhabitants were noble savages. Many of them thought of them in a much more negative way. So the other passage that I have for you to look at tells about one of the Lieutenant General's men, Humphrey Blunt, who set off in an old carro to go get a longboat that had drifted across the river from their settlement in Virginia. The wind driving him upon the strand, certain Indians watching the occasion seized the poor fellow and led him up into the woods and sacrificed him. It did not a little trouble the lieutenant governor, who since his first landing in the country, how justly soever provoked, would not by any means be wrought to a violent proceeding against them, for all the practices of villainy with which they daily endangered our men, thinking it possible by a more tractable course to win them to a better condition. But now being startled by this, he well perceived how little a fair and noble entreaty works upon a barbarous disposition, and therefore in some manner purpose to be revenged. So even though Gonzalo is thinking, wow, it'd be just like the Golden Age again to have a settlement of people here in this island, Shakespeare's also reading the accounts that say how little a fair and noble treatment can work on a barbarous disposition. And this is exactly what Prospero and Miranda say to Caliban. We used to treat you well, but how did that work? Not well at all. You tried to rape my daughter, so I put you in this rock. He's accused of being so savagely natured that nurture can't stick on him, even if he's educated. So Shakespeare gives you a couple of people in this play. Miranda, who was cast out of her father's dukedom when she was 3 years old and has been brought up in this isolated, uncivilized island, and Caliban. So you can see with your reading whether Shakespeare is presenting them as noble savages, or if he's saying Miranda's noble because she comes from nobility, but Caliban is a monster because he comes from a witch. Anyway, as you read, you can see the debate that's taking place about the new world, the magic island where anything can happen that is Shakespeare's setting for this romance.